Thank you, Ambassador. I very much appreciate your testimony here today, and I understand the President's goal of wanting to reduce unfair tariffs that are placed on the United States, that he wants to level the playing field, that he wants to reduce the trade deficit, that he wants to remove barriers to entry, and he wants to reshore manufacturing. I think we need to be cautious. I get concerned about doing too much at one time, about biting off more than we can chew. To date, though, we have seen trillions of dollars in new private investment since the President has taken office. Domestic and foreign companies are expanding or opening new facilities here in the United States. And as you mentioned in your testimony, there's over 50 countries that are coming to the table because they want to make deals. I just want to bring up some of the concerns I've heard from manufacturers, importers from New York that I've spoken to, and they want to make sure that you're considering the impact that tariffs could have on materials, on parts, on supplies that are needed to manufacture here in the United States. Because obviously the goal is to bring those jobs home, to reshore as much as possible. But if there's tariffs on plastics, lumber, metals, it obviously makes it very difficult to manufacture here at home. And also, some of the importers that I've been speaking with have invested a lot of money to divest out of China and move into other friendlier nations, Cambodia, for example, Vietnam, and they're concerned that the across-the-board tariffs in Asia are impacting their supply chain and ultimately their businesses. And they're hopeful that deals will come forward very quickly, but they've made it also very clear that they can't wait 90 days for a deal to be made. And that it would literally close their business. And so I just want to hear from you on where you think you're making inroads there, on making deals with some of these countries to avoid that type of scenario, and if you could just answer those two, comment on those 2 points first.
Certainly, I'm happy to do that. And again, just to reiterate, we've had these, this enormous trade deficit that developed under President Biden. These things are supposed to be self-correcting under normal economic theory. When they're not, it shows that there's something structural at risk here. So that's what's being addressed. We now have so many countries saying, we're not going to retaliate against you, we're going to work with you, we're going to try to figure out a way forward, that the President is looking forward to trying to find a way forward to make deals with these folks. China is on its own path. It's chosen retaliation for many years. It's chosen uncertainty. I won't comment much further on the U.S.-China relationship, but I think what you're talking about, Congresswoman, with respect to these other countries, I think we could count on having some deals with them within the next few weeks or months.
Yeah, I hope it's more the few weeks, because I think, again, too many months may hurt the ability for these companies to survive there. At least if you're able to do some business in Vietnam or Cambodia, you don't have to rely on communist China, which they're already starting to move out. But I feel like that's a real issue, because even if we want to bring the supply chain home, this brings me to my second point about pharmaceuticals. We've all said it here today. 4 years that Joe Biden was there, he did nothing to reduce our dependency on communist China for our medical supply. In fact, from 2020 to last year, we saw $213 billion worth of medicine imported from China. That's a 2.5-time increase than the decade before. And so we are relying more today, post-COVID, on communist China for our pharmaceuticals, and that is a very dangerous thing. But my question is, with your goal of trying to bring facilities back home, I mean, it does take about 7 years to get one of these manufacturing plants up and running. How do you close the gap? If the President's going to do tariffs on pharmaceuticals, which I would really caution against that, but if that is the goal, to try to get them to come back home, we know it takes about 7 years for those plants to get up and running. How are we going to close that gap so we're not hurting ourselves in the process, but we are doing what we need to do, which is bring that supply chain home?
Well, I think there's a role for Congress in bringing home the supply chains. The President can act with the authorities he's been given, and we found that a tariff isn't, in the first term, we found a tariff is a way to become less dependent on China, for example. We know it works. It's just math. The data's there. That's how it is. To the extent that Congress is interested in helping reshore and creating, tax structures that incentivize manufacturing, I think that's just really important. I think we have to have that.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I actually have legislation to do just that, to incentivize our sensitive supply chain, particularly pharmaceuticals, back here, and also to utilize Puerto Rico, which has had historically the infrastructure to do it. I agree with my friend Dr. Murphy, who pointed that out earlier, and I have 2 pieces of legislation that I hope the committee will we'll take up, or perhaps we'll put a piece in the tax package. But I do look forward to working with you. I think it does take more than that. We also have to reduce some of the regulatory framework and some of the permitting process that takes too long. But we can get there, but we need to make sure we don't hurt ourselves in the interim. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Carey.